The last time I was in Delhi was in March of 2020, right before COVID hit. I think I was on one of the last flights that actually did take place from Delhi to Kabul, and then within a week or so, then all flights were grounded because of COVID. But I've visited India a lot of times, many, many times, and got a lot of friends there. And honestly speaking, and I've said this to a lot of my Indian friends, that India is um, one of three countries that I can feel when I am there, I feel like I am home. I don't feel like I'm in a foreign country. Of course, Afghanistan is the first home, and where I was born. I grew up, and America is a second home. I've been here the past 2.5 decades, lived here, based here. But also India, I have that feeling, that sense of closeness. And I think it goes back to the theme that you were talking, and Ambassador Haidari and Shivam all talked, that, relations between India and Afghanistan, it goes back centuries. It's not only a state to state relations, mostly people to people. And that's the feeling that I personally get. But let me echo what both Ambassador Haidari and Shivam said in terms of the relationship that existed, the two-way relationship that existed during the Afghan Republic between Kabul and Delhi. Now, Ambassador Haidari really did an excellent overview of all the different, aspects of the relationship. I was more exposed on the security aspect, and from my several years at the National Security Council, we had very, very close cooperation with India when it came to issues of security, particularly when it came to counterterrorism. There was very, very close cooperation and a lot of intelligence sharing. I cannot and I do not really wish to go into the details of any of it, although I do have quite a lot of interesting stories to tell. But there was much that was shared between the two countries, and of course, given the nature of the situation and the threats that were posed to India, it was mostly us basically sharing information, sharing intelligence, and not only that, but also cooperating. All the way from the strategic to the operational, even to the tactical level, we did that cooperation. And so just echoing that the relationship was two ways, that the benefits were actually two ways, and the feelings I hope that I had is actually two. In my experience, it is two ways. Um, the other point I wanted to mention with regard to the India-Taliban relationship, that the actual contacts, now, not saying that the initial contacts, but the initial widespread contact between India and the Taliban actually started at least a couple of years before the fall of Kabul. Without getting into any specifics of it, the Indian government, like any other government, like any other responsible government that is looking for its own security, that is looking for its own national interest, I think we're predicting something catastrophic to happen in Afghanistan. And as such, and even though they, did not really like to engage with the Taliban, but their engagement did actually start a couple of years before the fall. And then, of course, that reluctance, given the Taliban-Pakistan relationship and that closely knit relationship for decades, that reluctance translated into, a longer time for India to really get now into not only at the intelligence level, security contacts, but also at the diplomatic level relationship. And it's the way almost all other countries are conducting. So, in fact, I'm not really, as an Afghan, I'm not criticizing India for being pragmatically in touch with the current authorities in Afghanistan, with the Taliban. It's basically looking into its own interests in the same way that Pakistanis do, the Iranians do, Central Asians do, the Russians recognize them, the Chinese do, even Americans are in touch with them. But nevertheless, we should not also forget that a longer, a more fruitful, a sort of a mutually responsible relationship will only happen and will only be possible between Afghanistan and India when there is, a legitimate, law-based, a broad-based government in Kabul that could have those legitimate and that could have those sort of methodical ties to Delhi.